Well, hello, peeps. Good afternoon. Good afternoon out there in the land of dispense. So, it's Monday, and you know that I know that you know we are not getting through a Monday without talking about it being Crush Monday. But today is a really special stream for me. I want to spend Crush Monday talking about real life superheroes. Real life superheroes. And my real life superhero, my sis. Now, listen. Today may not be the best day to do this, but I would be a hypocrite if I did not spend today talking about what it means to get through adversity, to have determination, to show strength. Because today is Tissue Day. Today's my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, sis. Hope you and mom and dad are celebrating it up today. But, you know, here's the thing. I did not want to get out of bed this morning. I didn't. I didn't sleep well last night, and I did not want to get out of bed this morning. But you know what? I did. Because I thought to myself, yet again, here we are in another situation where I don't want to do anything except pull the covers up over my head. But I didn't. And that's the important part of this, is that even in the toughest of times, each and every one of us has a real life superhero that can kick us in the pants, force us to do the tough things because they did them. So I want to tell you the story about my sister today. I got my little cake going on back here for her. I can't even point to it. That's for her. And I want to share a little bit. About Diane and her life and how we should all hope to have a hero like I have. Okay, tissue. Here we go. So, sorry. So my sis, Diane, well, we called her DI, was 3-ish, actually a little bit more than 3 years older than me. She was a February 71 birthday. I'm an October 74. So 3.5, 3.5 years older than me. And we fought like cats and dogs. But that's okay because I feel like that's a rite of passage for siblings who happen to be that close in age. And growing up, there were a lot of lessons that I learned from her. See, Diane was the like tough as nails, like gritty, get her fingernails dirty, like bull kind of kid. She was strong as an ox, and she would literally do like any task on the farm, any task. Now, I, on the other hand, was not that. I was like super softy, super emotional, super analytical, and had zero common sense. I'm talking like if you could have negative common sense, that was this girl. So we made quite a pair. My dad would send us out to do stuff, and Diane would dive right in. She would dive right into it. And I, on the other hand, would stand there and want to overanalyze the situation and measure every angle. And, it's like measure twice, cut once. I think I was like that when I came out of the womb. And my dad would just be like, I remember his facial expressions when he'd be like, go grab that thing of wire. Like Dan would run across, put the gloves on, grab the wire, drag it over. And I'd stand there and go, well, which wire? Because there's like 3 spools of it over there. And where exactly do you need me to take it? What exactly, like, how exactly do you want me to hold it? Like, I think back now as an adult and I think, okay. The fact that both my dad and my sister did not strangle me on multiple occasions, I consider that to be a win. But I always watched and analyzed and observed a lot when I was younger. And so suffice to say, Di and I struggled a lot because we had very different approaches to everything, basically, in life, including schoolwork. Once we got to be both of us of school age, my sister hated school. She used to get into trouble all the time in the classroom. My mom was constantly getting phone calls. And then there was me, who was the bookworm, the shy, the quiet, the over-analytical, the perfectionist, the antithesis of living in the moment. And, I think now I have a unique perspective being a teacher now for 22 years. And I think about my sis, and I think about how, I see so many students that have that same type of like impulsive, attribute, I think is, characteristic. And I think a lot about why she had that like, impulsive attribute. My sister struggled academically in school, and certainly not because she wasn't capable, and certainly not because she was not an intelligent person, because she was. And I know this because I would quiz her all the time on things for her tests. We would ride the school bus because it was a really long bus ride. And I would spend the whole time like studying with her on the bus, and she knew it. She knew it inside and out and up and down and left to right and diagonal if you asked her to. And then she'd come home and she was upset because she didn't do well on a test. And then I think she just got to the point where she, for her own sanity, had to stop stressing about it as much as she was and just kind of live there. Do you know what I mean? Like, she accepted what she was able to do, and then she pushed herself in those directions, and then I think about like the idea of adversity. She was up against it, and she never blew off school. She just really loved being social. There you go, sis. I just put it in a positive light for you. um hey, kiddo. Hey, Nikki. So she met adversity with school at a really young age. Now, I want to talk about okay, when my sister was 13, she was diagnosed with MS. And I will never forget. I will never forget that day. Um, it was in the spring. It was field days, actually, at school. And my dad was working as usual. My mom would be coming to the school to watch me not perform very well in field days, but who cares? It was a good time. Um, and my sis woke up and she went to get out of the bed and she fell. And it was weird. Like, I went in and she was sitting on the edge of the bed and she was like tapping her foot on the floor. And I was like, what the heck? What's the matter with you? And she's like, I don't know, my foot's asleep or something. Like, but I could tell something else was going on. Like, just her movements, her posture. There were all sorts of things that were just off. Um, but, my mom sent me to school. So I went to school. And like the the rest of the time kind of following that, a lot of it was a huge blur. And I think part of it was because of my age and I wasn't really sure like exactly what was going on. I just know that my sister spent a lot of time in hospitals, a lot of time in hospitals. And I was there with her a lot. Um, and I watched her go through so many tests. Um, I am not a fan of needles. I will admit it to this day. I am 48 years old and I hate the idea of getting blood work done, seeing needles. And I mean, she took it all like a champ. They did like spinal taps on her. They did so much. Um and I would always leave the room. I was like, nope, I'm out. Tap it out. And I would go stand out in the hallway. Nowhere to lie. But you want to talk about having a front row seat to the idea of strength? Oh boy. Yeah. So up to this point, I had watched, unbeknownst to me, a hero in the making, right? Um, sorry, 10 seconds. Okay. Um, I watched a hero in the making. I watched someone who had already struggled with adversity now have to struggle with the one thing that, like, she always excelled at, and that, thanks, Bren. Um, the one thing that my sister always excelled at was like her strength, her physical strength. I'm talking at this point. And then I um I watched her struggle with that, and I watched her be angry, really, really angry because she couldn't do the things that she always could. Um, and when um when the doctors finally figured out what was going on, um, I guess I didn't really understand because of how young I was. They told my parents she was one of the youngest cases of multiple sclerosis in the country, and that it took them so long to figure it out because of her age. Um, but then they did. They figured it out, uh, and they created a course of action. And the next few years were just doctor's appointments and physical therapy and a lot of crying and yelling and being pissed off at the world. Can you imagine being a hormonal teenager who grew up being able to do anything physically that she was asked to do, to now being told, hey, you gotta scale it back a little bit? She basically looked at those doctors and was like, nope, it's not gonna happen. um, and I watched her fight with herself and fight with our parents and fight with her doctors. And every single time, she won. I'm not shocked by that. Um, she won. And sorry, my Alexa was just literally going off for no reason. I never even said or anything close to her name. Um, that's creepy. That's so creepy. Oh God, she's still doing it. She's possessed. Um, so I watched and I learned and I loved and admired. But here's the funny thing. So, quick side note about me. Um, I made the decision, I think, in like 8th grade that I was not having children. It was one of those situations where Dad would always force us, like, oh, tell us about your day. And he never would accept just like nothing happened. Because he knew, he's like, that's impossible. You went to school and literally nothing happened for 8 hours. So we were having spaghetti and meatballs. I remember it. It's one of those key moments in my life. Um, and, we tried the whole, like, well, nothing big happened. And my dad pushed it, and I said, fine. You want to know what happened? Here's the deal. You ain't never having grandkids out of this baby right here. And he was like, what is happening right now? And my mom didn't know what was going on because I didn't talk to anybody about it. So we watched a movie about childbirth. Yep. And I said, and I quote, there ain't no way that is coming out of this body. And it was funny because, like, my dad's like, okay, I'm done. He pushed his plate out of the way. My mom's like, Tori. I said, well, what? He asked. Because that's how my brain worked. Like, the logical part of my brain, I didn't understand that what I was saying was, I didn't understand there was anything wrong with it. Now, my sister, on the other hand, she was told from the time that, like, she was starting to become a woman, whatever, right? She was told that it probably would not be possible for her to have kids because of the stress that childbirth would have on her body and things. Because, if you don't know anything about MS, it's very heavily triggered by physical and emotional stress. And so for a really long time, like through high school and through college, my sister had a lot of episodes, a lot. And I remember distinctly the whole idea of having kids because when I watched DI go through all of those things, like, I don't know, something switched in my head, and I, like, became her caretaker. I started thinking of myself as, like, the big sis, you know. I mean, Debbie is the big sis. Like, you don't mess with the big sis. But, like, Debbie wasn't in the house at that point. She was already out with Joe and, had a family. I think Brian, yeah, because Brian's only 9 years older than me. So I started taking on the role of being DI's big sis. And so, like, I felt like it was my job to, like, take care of her. What? Like, I look back on that now and I think, like, wow, that was kind of arrogant. That was really arrogant of me to think that, A, she couldn't take care of herself, and B, that she wasn't taking care of me. um, so, so yeah, there was a lot of that where I felt like I had to be the one, like, to, like, shield her and protect her. But so fast track to a prime example where she was actually taking care of me.
I said like my sister was always like the physical one, and I was always like the weakling, basically. Um, and I think I think she knew like I didn't have any self confidence. I think she knew that I was like the nerd. Um, and I think she was worried I was gonna be like picked on and stuff. I like I was really self conscious of how I spoke, and there were a lot of things. And I think she tried to like get me to be more like her, which on the surface, she had like this abrasive tone where it was like she would look at you and be like, I don't give a shit what you think about me. But like I knew deep down she did. Like she cared about what her friends thought and she cared about what her family thought. But she always acted like she didn't, like she was like too cool for school. Um and so one night she was mad at me because something happened at school and I let somebody like bully me. And so she decided at that point that she was going to beat on me until I hit her back. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And she just kept hitting me. Now, okay. We grew up in like a double wide trailer, okay? Those things are not very soundproof. um and they're not big at all. And so we were down the hall and we were messing around and I was crying. I'm like, stop it, quit picking on me, right? Like I had no problems telling her to stop it, but it was where other people were involved, that's where I struggled. um and my dad yeah, there were some good times in that trailer, huh, cuz um my dad could hear us down the hall. Mm. And we got the if I have to come down there. My dad was like this giant big hulk of a man and his voice was like, Liz, go check on those kids. and so my mom came down and she opened the door and I was like, do 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 do. I was crying and I'm like, Mom, she won't leave me alone. She's hitting me. And I was basically whispering and whimpering. And there's Diane sitting on the bed like she did absolutely nothing wrong. And my mom's like, knock it off. And then closed the door. Um, and then my sister started beating at me again. But I remember this moment. It was like one of the most triumphant moments and one of the most scary moments of my life. So there was like an odd corner in our room, and it was where the door swung in, but then the closet jutted out, and she had me backed in that corner, and I was like, stop it, and I'm like whining and crying and boo-hooing, and oop, I just punched my mic. I punched my mic. Um, and I was like covering my eyes, and she's like, just hit me. And listen, okay, just to be fair, she was not abusing me. She was hitting me, but it wasn't like she wasn't beating me, right? I didn't know the difference at the time. And she had me backed and she's like, just hit me once. And I'm like, no, leave me alone. And I'm like, do, right? And then all of a sudden, something happened and like something snapped in my head. And I just, without even looking, I just went like, and I punched her. I punched her and I gave her a bloody nose. What? I did. Um, and then my dad came down the hall. Sorry, Dad. Sorry, Dad. Yeah. And he's like, he gave the famous Liz, your kids So I'm like, oh, we're mom's kids right now because we're causing trouble. Um, but I'll always remember that. Because I knew, like in the moment, I don't think I knew what she was doing. I just thought she was beating on me. But like now I know what she was doing. Like she was trying to get me to like stick up for myself and things. Like a big sister should do. So she was determined, all right. She was determined to get me to swing at her come hell or high water. And I did. Um and that was the one and only time like we ever actually like physically fought. We fought more with our mouths than we ever did physically. Um I think that's a gift that we got from our parents. Um, they were not like, physical like that. And they were both pretty quick to, like my mom, oh God, she wiped up the bathroom floor with some girl's hair because this girl said something nasty about my mother in high school, like basically claiming that my mom was, I don't know, what was the term back then in the 40s, 50s? Loose? I don't know. Anyways, um, she wiped up the bathroom floor with this woman's hair. But my dad was always like, like a quick-witted jab back, So I think we were the best of both of them. But I loved that. And then, my sister went to college. And she didn't make the best choices in college. She did not make the best choices in college. Um, and so um I would make many trips to college with both mom and dad. Um, and I got to see firsthand all the mistakes that she was making. Yikes. Um, but when she would get sick and she would be in the hospital for extended time, I actually did her college assignments for her. Her and I would sit and she'd be like, "Ugh, I have this book to read." Actually, now that I think about it, wait a minute. I think she manipulated me a little bit. That little weasel. Um, she had this English class or this English lit class. I don't know what it was, but there was a lot of reading and a lot of writing papers. Two things that I was really, really good at. So I basically took that college class for her that semester. Yay, me. Um, but yeah. Um, and it, initially, like I remember a lot of the doctors arguing and a lot of appointments where they were like, you are going to make your situation worse if you don't stop pushing yourself physically. At which point, she would always basically thumb her nose at them and be like, I'm not going to stop. I remember like mom and dad were trying to get her to slow down. And like, you know, the worst thing in the world was to tell her that she couldn't do something. Okay, you want to talk about manipulation? If you wanted to get DI to do something, tell her she couldn't, and then she'd be like, yeah, I'm doing it. So, I watched her then. She got her teaching degree. She moved away. She became a teacher. A good one. A really good one. She cared about her kids. She was constantly bringing stories home, telling me all about them. Um, And at that point, I didn't want anything to do with teaching. I was not signed up to be a teacher at that point. Um, I was going where the money was. I was going into law. I was going to be a lawyer. Um, And um then life changed, right? Um Life changed, and we lost dad, and I realized that money was by no means the most important thing in the world, and I should probably think about leaning into the things that I was good at that point, um, which was helping others. I had spent my whole life doing it, right? Like I was taking care of my sister. Um, I, I was the one that like a lot of my friends would come to with secrets and advice, and because they knew like once it came in, it didn't go out. Um, and so I decided to switch my major, and I uh, I followed in I followed in my sister's footsteps, and I went into education. And you know, I I watched I watched Diane as she got older. Um, her MS, it changed. Whereas like when she was younger, she had a lot of episodes, a lot. Um, and she spent a lot of time in the hospital. And then eventually the doctors said, "Listen, you can't teach anymore. Like it's too physically and emotionally draining on you. You have to stop." And so she was then no longer able to officially hold a job. And and how I watched what that did to her. Like for a while she felt like, well, if I don't have a job, I don't have a purpose. But she quickly realized that like she still had a purpose. Like there were so many ways that she was contributing. She moved home. And she became like, like she was with mom after that forever. Um, and she, you know, and then she and Dave got together. Um, and then came Joseph. And a lot of people were worried, a lot, but she had it in her head. She's like, I'm going to be a mom, and I'm going to be a damn good one. And so basically they said there's risks. She didn't care. Um and she said, I'm going to be a mom. And like through the years there were a lot of like experimental things that they did for her MS. Um and I am by no means a medical expert, a doctor. I just know that I've been around this for a really long time. Um and I know like one of the things with MS is it breaks down the myelin sheath between your nerve endings. There's like these tiny little synaptic gaps between your nerves. Um, and what MS does is it deposits basically what's known as plaque um, into these synaptic gaps, and it deteriorates the myelin sheath. And eventually, that's why people with MS end up with like neurological, which then manifest as like physical ailments. Like my sister, when she first, like when this first happened at the age of 13, all signs had pointed to a stroke because it had impacted the left side of her body. Um, and as she got older, you would see like if she tried to hold, like say for example, this cup, if she held it with her right hand, there you go. And if she tried to hold it with her left hand, like you would see that it would shake and she would wobble, and it was it was basically like a strength issue. Um, and obviously, like, as she got older, the more plaque that built up, the more it affected her. But here's the thing, like, if you do the math, wait, let me do the math because my brain's not working right now. Okay, I was right. Okay. So from the time she was diagnosed at the age of 13 until until we lost her at 51, 38 years. 38 years with this horrible disease. You know what the doctors told her? They thought that by the time she was 25, she'd be in a wheelchair. They thought, like, within the first 10 to 12 years, she'd be in a wheelchair. And with the severity and the frequency of her episodes at that age, like, they were really, really concerned. But she proved them all wrong. She proved them all wrong. Because, you know, there were times where if people didn't know her well, it was funny because somebody had said once it looked like she was walking around like she was drunk. But like I could tell if she was like overtired or she was like in pain somehow. Like I could tell. There was a little bit of a difference to her gait when she walked. Her left hand would shake a little bit more than normal. But other people probably wouldn't have noticed. Sorry, I just like lip smacked right into the microphone. I'm sure that sounded amazing. But she was driving. She was mobile. She was still hardworking, still tending to a garden, still outside with the animals, still mowing the lawn, still doing the things. And so I felt like it was important. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I felt like it was important that her story get told for a couple reasons. One, take a look around. Just take a look around. You may, in fact, be in the presence of a real life superhero. And I don't want you to take that for granted. And I also want you to realize that it's okay to find strength in others. Like today, I didn't want to get out of bed. But then I did. And I did it for her and because of her. Um, because I watched my sister struggle with a disease for 38 years, where by all accounts, it should have taken the one thing that up until that point in her life, she was all in on. And that was like her physical ability, her sports ability, her physical ability, her strength. And then I watched her like basically say F you. And I watched her over time through her determination and her mental fortitude and strength rebuild her physical strength and still fight through all of that adversity and everything to be who she was meant to be. My hero. All those times where I thought I was doing something to protect her and help her and save her. That's not what was happening at all. That's not what was happening at all. She was transferring her strength, her determination, her ability to push through adversity. She was giving that to me. And the last thing I would do today to honor her on her birthday is to hide from that. So, a lot of times people just want to show like the happy. They want to, cut away all of the struggles and the strife and the adversity and the pain and stuff. And you can't do that because it's all of it that makes us who we are. All of it. And, like everybody, I don't want anybody to think that like my sister just struggled. She didn't. She had a lot of really good times. I'm just saying, like some of them a little too good, if you know what I mean. Um, but she taught me how to live, you know. Um, she taught me to stop over analyzing so much. Um, she was spontaneous, live in the moment, but still did it in a way where she cared for people and would give you the shirt off her back, and she would do anything for anyone. She really was the best of us. And people always say like, "Oh my god, you mean your dad wasn't your first hero?" I think when you're growing up, like you look at your parents in a different way. Like you automatically put them on a pedestal, right? Like you automatically like they're your caregivers. Like they are your protectors, and because of that they are your heroes. But I look now And although, like, mom and dad, they would try, like, quit being such a scaredy cat. Like, like I wouldn't go to the barn by myself. My mom would go to the store and I'd go in my room and I'd stand and like stare at the window and like cry until she came back, and just weird, weird things because I never wanted to be alone. And like they tried, but they tried from a parent perspective. My sister, she's the one. She's the one that got me to not be afraid. Because how could I be if she was showing strength through everything that she was dealing with? Why couldn't I do the same? And so my sister, the superhero. Yep. So this probably wasn't the best day to do this because I knew I was already emotional with it being her birthday. But then I also thought, like, what better day to talk about it? Crush Monday and my hero's birthday. Like, I have to tell her story, and I have to do it because I know that there are so many people who right now are struggling with things. Some things within our control and a lot of things outside our control. And we just don't know what to do. And if you could take anything away from my sister's story, was that she lived. She lived through adversity. She lived with determination and strength and love. And she never compromised who she was to do it. She had people tell her she couldn't do stuff, and she did it to spite them, I think. And I love that about her. I love that she never took no for an answer, and I love that she never accepted when somebody told her no. And because of that, we have Joseph. And Joseph, I think Joseph's going to follow in his mom's superhero footsteps. Because he got up today and he went to class. And he is completely killing it at school. And I told him how proud of him I am. And so, if he can do it, I can do it. And I know I can do it because I'm DI's sister. And so I was trained by the best. So take from this what you will. Enjoy a little bit of getting to know Diane and who she was behind the scenes, because I don't think people realized how much she had to fight and how strong she had to be, because she was just always that superhero. So unless somebody tells you what they're struggling with and how difficult it is, you'll never know. So if you are someone who is struggling and who is finding it difficult, lean on your superhero. And if you're capable, be that hero for somebody else. That way, we'll all be crushing one day together. This went a lot longer than I thought, and I only went through one tissue, so that's actually kind of surprising. But man, did I go through this tissue. So, for everybody who hung with me and sent me messages, I see them. I see them here. And I thank you for that. Get off this stream. Go find someone who is your hero. And spend 5 minutes telling them something you did today to crush it. So that you can hear it in their voice, you can see it in their face, you can feel it in their hug. How proud they are. And how they'll always be here for you. Because I know my sis will always be here for me. Okay. Let's see if I can wrap this up, right? That is all I have for you today. Whew, that was a lot. I hope that you have an amazing day. Please, please, please make the most of it because, as you know, it's just never, ever, ever gonna happen again. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow on the Tuesday edition of the Dispense Dish. Bye, guys.